What's up, YouTube? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. I think most of you are well aware if you're here on this channel, but on this channel, we talk college football, conference realignment, all from a Big 12 slant. And we have another pretty eventful live show planned coming up tonight because we got old Georgie out and talking, man. George Kliavkoff had his press conference at Pac-12 Media Days on Friday, and man, it was an interesting one with some real shots fired toward the Big 12. We're going to break it down, a lot of what Kliavkoff had to say, and more importantly, what that all means. What we can take from the characterization that we got of George Kliavkoff from everybody who was in attendance there and listened to him, man. Unhinged felt a little too strong for me. I was almost going to drop in an unhinged, like George Kliavkoff unhinged at Pac-12 Media Days. That may be a tad bit too strong, but certainly somebody who seemed to feel threatened, I would say, by the way that his words came out and what he said, in particular, one shot directed at the Big 12. So I do want to talk plenty about that today. I thought actually everybody's kind of missing the mark on the most important comment that came out of Big 12 or Pac-12 rather Media Day. I apologize if I will probably call it Big 12 Media Day like 17 times on accident today over the course of the show. It was Pac-12 Media Days. I think the most important quote that came out of that was actually tweeted by our guy Stuart Mandel, and it came from Oregon's athletic director. And it was very non-committal about a grant of rights. It was very dodging the question kind of an answer when asked about signing a grant of rights at Oregon, which is another thing, as you might guess, is going to throw, I would imagine, some instability into the Pac-12 mix, which they do not need any more of that right now. The Pac-12 has plenty of that going on right at this second. And that's another thing that continues to push in that direction. We also have today, at least on my list here, a little bit of an update on the Pac-12 TV contract. We got a tweet from Jason Shear, the Arizona 24/7 reporter. We also, the LA Times did some really good reporting at Pac-12 Media Days and dropped a couple of very interesting nuggets. One, that it's like a my, look how the turntables have turned. I believe that's a Michael Scott quote, right? To throw that down on what happened with Pac-12 expansion a year ago. And it's a story that will infuriate, I'm sure, many Pac-12 fans. Also, Lincoln Riley apparently knew that USC might be leaving the Pac-12 when he took the job. That was another little nugget that was very juicy from the LA Times over the weekend. But we also have to celebrate. I don't know how exactly we want to do this. Maybe you guys have better ideas on this. But Brett Yormark's first day as commissioner of the Big 12 is tomorrow. So I understand that will raise some questions like, John, could we be getting massive news tomorrow? Is tomorrow going to be a big news day and a big bomb going off like Arizona headed to the Big 12? I very, very much doubt that. But it is Brett Yormark's first day. So if anybody has a nice Jay-Z quote to commemorate the occasion, however it is that you want to celebrate my guy, Brett Yormark, taking over, you just let me know today here on the show. Just something to keep in mind as we head toward August 1st, okay? So that's the lineup of what I've got for you today. I already see that I've got a donation from Juan. He is setting the example, setting the tone here for this chat. If you want to follow up with him, there are going to be a lot of people in here. We're already approaching 200 in the chat at this point. So it's going to be tough for me to get to very much of what's happening there in the chat, but there is a way that you can make sure that I do see your question or comment, and that is by donating, clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. Click that $, you can donate, and it will pin it up to the top. For me, it will ensure that I see it, ensure that I read it on the chat. Easy way to do that. Plus, just supports the work that I'm doing here on this channel, bringing you Big 12 content week in and week out. If you're watching this taped, hit me up on Venmo. It's John-Kurtz-4. That's a way you can support the channel as well. And for everybody out here, it is free. One click. Doesn't take a single cent to support the channel by just liking the video. Simply liking the video helps me out and will help boost me in the ever important YouTube algorithm. So I do appreciate all of you who do that as well. Let's get off and rolling, guys. Let's get off and rolling tonight. Juan, what's up, Juan? Juan says, go Cougs. How about people picking K-State to be in the Big 12 championship game this week? I'm actually not totally aware of who that was, but there's been a lot of buzz about it for the last month. I'd say about a month ago, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, that really started to kick up to the point where I actually had a Penn State fan in my mentions telling me K-State's overrated. And I was like, man, when we started this offseason, nobody was talking about K-State at all. So it has been one heck of a roller coaster ride. But yes, I mean, look, you land 6 first-team All Big 12 players on the preseason All Big 12 team more than anybody else in the league. It's going to turn some heads. And I think that's a part of it. I think a part of it is K-State has some real legitimate NFL talent on that roster. And as word started to leak out about that, like Matt Miller, for instance, ESPN draft analyst, he started tweeting about that, how many high-profile prospects K-State has there. That's going to draw attention. And so I think people are coming around to that. So, yes, Juan, shout out to you. Thank you for being here, man. Go Cougs and go Cats. We can come together on that, right? So thank you for that, Juan. Boy, I see I'm about to have to talk about some bad news here, I think, from Calico Willie. But I certainly understand and appreciate you being here. Calico Willie, thank you for the donation. Says, hey, John, I saw the Dylan Edwards offer earlier this past week. What is the scoop? Yeah, so Dylan Edwards, 4-star recruit, running back, one of the fastest recruits in the country, had been committed to K-State for a little over a month. He's from Derby, Kansas. He got a Notre Dame offer this week, visited Notre Dame, literally just about left the K-State campus to go to South Bend, and announced that he was decommitting. Has not committed to Notre Dame, but opening the recruitment back up. Yeah, I mean, the only scoop I would give you there, Calico Willie, I think there are a lot of hurt feelings based on how it went down. And I doubt that you're going to see that marriage reunite at some point in time. Dylan has really liked the recruiting process throughout. He's been a big fan of soaking up a lot of the attention, both he and his dad, I think. So this is not a total shock to my system. It is kind of the game that you have to play if you're after some of these really high-profile recruits. It's a bummer, but K-State already had another running back recruit in Joe Jackson, who was a high 3-star. And they're still after Joseph Randall, and according to some, lead in the recruitment for John Randall Jr., who's a 4-star running back out of the state of Kansas. So I think they'll be all right, but it is a bummer. It's a bummer for sure. And if you want to hear more about that, Calico Willie, check out the 3-Maw podcast, which I think just dropped. So I think as soon as you get done here, you can go pull up your podcast feeds, the 3-Maw podcast, if you listen to it, and hear myself, Derek Young, and Cole Manbeck on that. Robbie, I appreciate the donation, Robbie. Robbie says, are you as frustrated as I am with the Edwards news? I feel like these kids don't understand the word commitment. Yes, it is very frustrating. It is definitely frustrating, but I'll just echo the thoughts that I had a second ago. K-State's going to be fine. They're in a pretty good position, and this is cost of doing business if you're going to recruit at a higher level, which K-State's finding out. I mean, they frankly have not been in a lot of these battles over the last few years. So anyway, I digress. That's where we are there. R Web, what's up, R Web? R Web says, your mark, allow me to reintroduce myself. That's right. It will be quite literally like a reintroduction of Brett Yormark tomorrow when he takes over as commissioner of the Big 12. And I don't know. Will we get some comments out of Yormark? I'm curious what his response to Kliavkoff's comments would be, because we've got to dive into these. Look, you see the tease on the video is him lobbying accusations of tampering, which I guess I don't know what the governing body is here that is supposed to do anything about this, but I think it was just Kliavkoff lumping in the phrase tampering because Big 12 presidents and athletic directors have been reaching out to people in the Pac-12, which I'm sure I do not doubt that has happened. I would also think that that's happened in basically every single realignment scenario ever. We know that, like Robert Allen reported last year, that Oklahoma State had talked with every single Power 5 conference out there when Texas and Oklahoma left. Like, that's the game, George. That's the game, Georgie boy. You're just going to have to deal with some of that. And I'm sorry. Tough, you know what. But the whole way that Kliavkoff conducted himself here just had me feeling like a guy who's feeling the heat and feeling the pressure. Now, I don't come away from this saying it's imminent that the Big 12 is going to raid the Pac-12, that this is going to happen tomorrow. Again, I've already said that once here on the show today. I still feel very much like the situation is where it has always been. However, we did get some further destabilizing comments out of Oregon's athletic director at the whole event. And Kliavkoff came across to me as somebody who is feeling legitimate heat and like a legitimate threat. I think his goal was to try and paint it like, oh, I'm going to talk down to the Big 12 and put them in their place. But really, when you feel the need to do that, that tells me all that I need to know about what position you feel like you are in. If it were just something silly, why would you waste time at the podium talking about it at your media day at a time when you're trying to project strength? It came across to me as a little small, like doing the opposite of projecting strength when you have to go to the podium and try to lob shots at another conference, which she even admitted was not the most collegial thing he's ever done. I don't think that really speaks to somebody that feels really secure with where they're at right now. I mean, think about it. Like, And I try to do this just to like be a better person on a regular basis. If I in my head immediately jump to like, well, I'm going to make fun or mock or be like, what are you doing there? I stop and think like, why am I doing this? Is it because I'm upset or unhappy with something going on in my life? Am I jealous? Like what's happening there? And most of the time the answer is yes, there is a reason for that. And that's honestly a good life lesson for everybody. But I think it applies here. Like if you're going to engage in some of this name calling accusations, that sort of thing, most of the time it's because you have some issues in house and you're feeling a legitimate threat. And I think that's what's happening here with Kliavkoff. The comment that I'm sure most of you have heard and that drew the most attention was he was asked about Brett Yormark's open for business comment. So Brett Yormark obviously saying that the Big 12 is open for business. And George Kliavkoff said, I appreciate that. We haven't decided if we're going shopping there or not. Like, okay. And I said this at the time, and I will reiterate it. That is a pretty good line. Like, that's a clever line. So whether that was Kliavkoff off the cuff, whether that was him pre-planned, whether that was a PR consultant or an SID, somebody like that giving him that line, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, it does not at all represent reality. I think you guys all understand where I sit on this. The Pac-12 is not raiding the Big 12. I think still the most likely option right now would be either the Pac-12 staying put or the Pac-12 staying put and adding a couple of teams. I would still put that slightly above right now what I feel like the odds are, the Big 12, at least like before this football season, raiding the Pac-12. But that doesn't mean that it's likely that the Pac-12 is in that position. And that's been the argument the whole time. The Pac-12 is dealing with so much instability. They are not a safer spot to be jumping to if you're a school from the Big 12. And we've made the point over and over again, these TV numbers get skewed. The level of competition actually on the field, the Big 12 has been a much better conference. So the Big 12 is just in a better position, even if in a vacuum, these two entities are worth relatively the same amount from TV networks, which we'll find out the answer for sure on all of that in the coming days, weeks, and months. But at least speculatively, I think most people would agree they are fairly similar, if not the Big 12 being in a slightly stronger position. But I'll even just leave the statement at this point at, I think there's probably truth to, like, in a vacuum with no instability issues, Washington and Oregon, like, able to sign, willing to sign, they're probably pretty similar. But the Big 12 has the leverage right now because it's a safer spot to jump. And if they pulled Pac-12 schools, they would take over some of that Pac-12 after dark time slot and be able to recoup that money. Therefore, everybody is making more money there. So it's kind of an equal situation, but more stability and not having to worry about playing the Oregon and Washington dance. But more on that coming up. So Kliavkoff said Big 12 presidents have messaged Pac-12 presidents about Pac-12 schools joining the Big 12. Quote, as recently as yesterday, Kliavkoff revealed to 24/7 Sports Brandon Marcello. So that would have been as recently as Thursday. As recently as Thursday of this past week, apparently Big 12 leadership, people in Big 12 leadership positions were still reaching out to the Pac-12, right? Kliavkoff said he was forwarded messages of such that were sent to top officials at Pac-12 institutions. Quote, the tampering continues, Kliavkoff told 24/7 Sports. The good news is my presidents and chancellors and athletic directors forward me all those messages. I have a big collection of those messages. I mean, like, again, okay, congratulations. Cool. I'm sure there is some thought here. I know that conferences are always careful about, like, the Big Ten was careful about saying the order of who reached out to who, and that may become an issue in UCLA's battle that they're fighting with local government there in California. So there is an order of business, like the way that this is supposed to go all of the time. I don't know if there are any, like, legitimate ramifications there from a legality standpoint, but look, Kliavkoff can do whatever it is that he wants. We know these things happen. Clearly these things happen because we know that USC and UCLA left without a peep leaking before, and we know that Texas and Oklahoma left without a peep leaking before, right? So, like, these conversations do happen. That's just the reality of the situation there, George. And he said that at the podium. So there are a couple things to point out here. And I actually kind of nerd out on this stuff, being somebody who was in this game for 10 years. But, like, that comment, the open for business response, was at the podium. And then later he followed up with Stuart Mandel and said, hey, look, I basically popped off because, and this was, I took it to be a sidebar conversation, which usually you get more revelatory answers at that point. Not at the podium, but, like, off to the side with some reporters. He was saying, look, that was probably not the most collegial thing I've ever done. I've just been tired of having grenades lobbed from every corner of the Big 12 at my conference over the last month or so. To me, again, that feels like a guy who is legitimately threatened here. Because if it were like the Mountain West, right? If it were the Mountain West reaching out to Pac-12 schools right now about, hey, you guys can always come, Oregon State, Washington State, you wouldn't. It's not a legitimate threat. You wouldn't be up there at the podium feeling the need to address it or say something about it. You know, I mean, this is clearly a guy who's pretty exasperated with everything that's going on right now if he's going to snap like that at the podium. So that, to me, again, reiterates that there is an actual legitimate threat here to the Pac-12. And his actions spoke louder than his words as far as that goes. It says Kliavkoff earlier Friday said from the podium he was growing tired of spending, quote, 4 weeks trying to defend grenades from every corner of the Big 12, end quote, following reports of his conference's uncertain future. Yeah. Then he even went on to say this, quote, doesn't it feel a little bit like a juvenile kind of attempt to disrupt our conference? Listen, in the early days, particularly in the first week, people were running scared, and I understand that, and that's a natural reaction. At some point, you have to realize no Pac-12 school is joining the Big 12, and you have to focus on making your league successful. I think it's in the best interest of all college athletics if the Big 12 is strong and stand alone in the Power 5. Obviously, I feel that way about the Pac-12. Okay. So, again, like these are like the famous last words type of comments, you know? I mean, clearly nobody schooled him on Bob Bowlesby and his experience at Big 12 Media Days last year where he went up and said, I feel like we're great, we're stable, no issues, no realignment on the horizon. And then a week later, Texas and Oklahoma were gone. And here he's definitively saying, well, juvenile attempts by the Big 12, and nobody clearly is leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12. All right, man. Hopefully those are not famous last words for your sake, I suppose, George, but I would not be making those kinds of comments right now. That was Kliavkoff, though. So it's that we haven't decided if we want to go shopping there, trying to talk down. It's being very accusatory of tampering. It's saying that it was a juvenile attempt by the Big 12. Like this was the language used by Kliavkoff on Friday. And I'm sure he's a guy who feels like he needs to project some real confidence and be the tough guy in a way. I didn't think that was the way to do it. I think the way to do it would have been more, you obviously would not be able to totally ignore the Big 12. You're going to get questions about it, but I would have deferred a little bit more. I would have been more deferential in just not mentioning the Big 12 and just talking about, hey, we're a strong conference. We think we're going to get good news from the TV networks. Once that happens, we'll be good to go. He was also, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he was asked a question about Oregon and Washington and whether or not they would sign a grant of rights. And he said they will sign it once I put something in front of them that is to their liking. I'm paraphrasing there, which my response to that would be, okay, I'm going to date Megan Fox once I put together a body that she likes. It's a great thought, and it would be true, technically. But what are the odds of that actually happening? Unfortunately for me, I don't think I'm going to bump out MGK anytime soon in dating Megan Fox, rather. And I don't think that the Pac-12 is going to be able to put together a deal that will be enticing enough for Washington or Oregon to sign anything away for multiple years. So, and more on that in a moment, because I think, again, that is like the comments and the nature of those comments are very easy to get sidetracked by. I understand why that is like the lead story out of this, but there's a lot more to this. And there's a much more meaningful, impactful comment that came from Oregon's athletic director, and I will get to that after some of these donations. Okay. I'm going to have to get caught up here. Pardon me while I rip back up the chat here. And if you want to donate, make sure your question or comment makes it onto the chat. You can click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that. Ensures that I see your question or comment and we'll address it here on the chat. And you're supporting the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content week in and week out here on this channel. All right, so Calico Willie had one more about the Dylan Edwards decommit from K-State. What does it mean for Avery? Avery's fine. You can go check his Twitter or check my Twitter at JL Kurtz. He was tweeting on Friday night after the Dylan Edwards news broke. He's good. Don't worry about that. I think they're friendly, but they were not like, that was not a package deal by any stretch of the imagination. Not worried about Avery Johnson's commitment to K-State at all. And again, if you want more on that, we talk plenty about it on the 3 Mile podcast that is just now out. Zachary, appreciate the donation, Zachary. My man Zachary Stockton says, what is the likelihood that George's comments are actually true and none of the Pac-12 schools are actually interested in the Big 12 at all? Well, not interested at all. I would say 0%. Now, the argument would be, are they legitimately interested, or is it covering their bases for like a fallback option here? And I would still say, I think it's in particular Arizona. I think there's been enough reporting out of Arizona and that corner of the world that they are certainly interested in the Big 12. That is the one that seems the easiest to shake loose right now, the one that would be wobbling the most from a Pac-12 standpoint. There's just been too much smoke, man. Even Sean Keeler, the Denver Post columnist, who kind of said like the Colorado administration generally leans toward wanting to stay in the Pac-12 because they look at the Big 12 as a JUCO conference, but on the other side, the fans would rather go. He was still even admitting that like there have been discussions there and there is thought there. Like, yeah, there is not nothing. It's not nothing, these Pac-12 schools, but the debate would be how likely are they to actually make the jump? I think there's no doubt that there is some level of interest. But look, I'm sure most of the Pac-12 schools would rather find a way. Look, if they could make the same amount of money in the Pac-12 and have the league actually stay together long term that they would in the Big 12, of course they'd rather be in the Pac-12. They would rather stick with their rivals. They would rather stick with what geographically makes sense. They would rather not have to deal with the upheaval of changing conferences and all of that. But again, the reality is how stable will that conference really be long term with Oregon, Washington, and now Stanford and Cal, based on the reporting that we saw last week, that those two are still on that short list for the Big Ten if and when they decide to expand again. So it's just a tough putt. It's a very tough putt. So it's legit. I do think it's legit. Kliavkoff, of course, is going to have to come out and say that nobody's interested. And of course, all this stuff is happening through back channels. So, he would not, we could safely say he likely wouldn't totally know if one school is very close to going because he sure as hell didn't know for sure about USC and UCLA when they were ready to make their jump. So we have that track record. And the same thing with Bowlesby again last year with Texas and Oklahoma. Zach says, love the content. Thank you for the donation. And thank you for that, Zach. Zach says, love the content. I'm a Cincy fan. I feel like this year is a purgatory year before our Big 12 entrance. Any advice on enjoying our final AAC season? Well, I can really understand that from a Cincy perspective because I'm not intimately familiar with what Cincinnati's roster looks like, but I know you guys had a hell of an NFL draft, and I know that you're having to replace a hell of a quarterback. So it's like, even within the Cincinnati program, it's kind of like I won't even say rebuilding, but like a retooling kind of year, reloading sort of year for Cincinnati after what they had last year and the incredible high that was. And on the next year, you have the new conference that you're coming into and all of that. So I totally get how this is like a weird spot for Cincinnati right now that can't be all that exciting. Not as exciting as last year, not as exciting as next year. I would just say, basically follow two leagues this year. I would say the fun part of it from a Cincinnati perspective is I'm sure you're still going to be very good. I saw they were at Cincy was what? Were they 2 or 3? They were still top 3 in the preseason AAC poll, I believe. So you're still going to have a good team. You still have an excellent coach. You also didn't lose your coach, by the way, to Notre Dame this last job cycle. Plenty to be happy for if you're a Cincinnati fan. And you can just add another conference to start getting excited about and paying more attention to. Obviously watching this content, but following the league throughout the year, I think would be the way that I would encourage you to really try and soak up as much as you can there. Think about what's coming. You still get to enjoy this football season with more to look forward to and more to follow this year. So best of luck to you guys. Best of luck to you guys this year. And I'm sure you're not going to need much of it. I would think it's going to be another pretty successful year of Cincinnati football. Glenn, thank you for the donation. Glenn says, the Big 12 is in good shape when the Pac-12 is trying to downplay the Big 12. And yes, I would definitely agree with that. Basically, the point that I was trying to make there, you're only going to make the comments over and over again. It was not just like one little slip up. It was multiple comments from Kliavkoff that fit the narrative to me of a guy that is feeling legitimately threatened, actually feeling some heat there to come out and say what he said. R-Web got 99 problems, but George K ain't one. Hit me. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I heard he's kicking you-know-what, but I don't know. I didn't think he really kicked a lot of you-know-what with his performance on Friday. And again, it kind of depends on where you're at in terms of how you feel about the performance. Like I saw Arizona reporters, it might have been Jason Scheer, I think, who's been – he seems very staunchly in the camp of, thinking that the Pac-12 is in bad shape. He's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from the John Canzanos of the world. So it's very easy to take his comments and read into it that it was not a good thing. I guess I could see how if you're a Pac-12 homer, you would read into it and be like, oh, see, look, everything he says is true. nobody's interested. He's got presidents texting him when other Big 12 presidents are trying to get at him. He's got this whole thing figured out. But I can tell you which one is a much more believable case. Like, what's the more believable case? That this guy knows he's in a little bit of trouble and is trying to go up there and use whatever ammo he can publicly to get people on his side, or the other way around, like in a situation that we saw the Big 12 go through last year where we know that everybody was looking around, that nobody in his league's looking around and everything's fine, and they may actually raid the Big 12. And which one is more believable? I'll leave that to you, but I know which one I think is a much more believable story as far as that goes. Let's see. We've got judicial protest. What's up, judicial protest? Thank you for the donation. Says, have you heard that according to reports, attorney Robert Wallach is bringing an antitrust lawsuit against the Big Ten on behalf of the Pac-12? I have not seen anything about that. And this is where I'm like out over my skis. If we're talking about legalities and antitrust and everything like that, I guess my question would be, where was this last year? Can that guy get on like the Texas-Oklahoma thing? Is that going to happen? I mean, I don't know. We're just headed to a world where I feel like there's going to be a lot of leagues and a lot of schools that would want lawsuits like that filed on their behalf. I kind of tend to think it's the same thing with the UCLA story. And I know they're like, even Canzano and some of the Pac-12 reporters have given some legitimate, like Wilner, a teeny tiny bit of like legitimate airtime to like, could UCLA try to back out of this if it gets too difficult for them and too financially perilous for them to leave for the Big Ten based on litigation and issues that are happening with the government, et cetera. I mean, like maybe so, but I just tend to kind of like shrug that stuff off and be like, they're going to figure out a way to like, this will just happen. I don't know that the toothpaste is going back in the tube for anything here. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anything about antitrust lawsuits at all. So I could be totally off there. And it's because I'm just a guy sitting in my apartment talking about college football. And I did not go to law school. So, but that is interesting. And I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I'll try to keep tabs on that. I've tried to follow a little bit along with what's happening with UCLA. It just sounds like it's going to be punitively expensive for them because people are so upset about them leaving Cal behind. Our web says shopping the Big 12 is $80 million per school and requires income verification. Georgie K's card just got declined. Well, look, it would be great if that were the price, $80 million per school. I guess I get what you're saying there with like the exit fee, right? I'm thinking more like TV valuations. If we were talking $80 million per school, that'd be great. But you're right. The exit fee that's been referenced for Texas and Oklahoma being in play there for some of those schools. And really so much more of it, again, is just about stability. The Pac-12 just doesn't have stability. The Big 12 finally has it. Like that's another part of this. People forget, and it's very easy to forget, I suppose, but the Big 12 has been a laughingstock for a decade because of instability, more than a decade because of instability. Well, now you finally have it. Like we're at a point where everybody's galvanized. KU's been put in their place with this Big 10 list that came out and this realization that basketball is not going to do it. Nobody else is really getting much interest. And I understand, I hear Pac-12 country saying, well, look, there's your argument. Like you guys all suck so much, nobody wants you. And that's why you feel you're in a position of power. Well, it actually does kind of work that way a little bit right now. So regardless of whether or not you want to look down your nose at that, that is the reality of the situation. So yes, it's not a good one right now for Kliavkoff. Our web, one of the most clever consistently commenters here in the live chats. Juan, thank you for the donation. Juan says, do you think there's a chance another group of five comes close to making the college football playoff this year? Well, I saw somebody starting to casually float like, hey, what about BYU this year? Does BYU have an outside chance at the college football playoff? So, maybe that's the answer there. I can't tell you that I put legitimately like enough research into it to have a great feel for that or a great idea of that. I don't think there's a team that would be as likely as I would have felt Cincinnati was going into last year. But again, that's easy to look back on in hindsight with knowing what Cincinnati put in the NFL draft and what Ritter was and all of that. But I don't know. This is where my focus has been pretty narrow on the Big 12 and realignment. And I'm not like out here reading Phil Steele and getting a preview on everybody from the group of 5 conferences this year. So that's a bit of a blind spot for me. I always try and be really honest with you guys. Like I don't have all the answers, and I'm not perfect here, and I can't spend every waking minute like researching all these different teams. So I don't know, but it'd be fun. It'd be fun. I'm just here for chaos. Like whatever chaos we can throw into the mix to not have it be Big Ten, SEC. Totally here for that. Obviously, I hope that includes the Big 12. Calico Willie says Pac-12 is floundering. Big 12 is where it's at. I got my tickets for K-State, Mizzou, sitting where I did for Texas A&M in 2011. All right, well, that's cool. I can't remember, Calico, if you're the one who asked me if I was going to the Mizzou game. Someone did at the very beginning of the chat. I will be at a wedding, unfortunately, that weekend, so I will miss K-State, Mizzou. 2011 A&M game was a great one, though. How many overtimes was that? Was that like 5 overtimes? K-State and Texas A&M in 2011. Ryan Tannehill playing for Texas A&M in that game. That was a good one. Appreciate you, Calico Willie. Thank you for the donation. Oliver, thank you for the support. Oliver says, great show. Go Cougs. And that's the double O. So Houston Cougs there. Appreciate that. And let's see. I think we got another one. Oh, yeah. We got a couple here. All right. Sorry. We've got Joe. What's up, Joe? Thank you for the support, Joe. As always, much appreciate that donation. Joe says, when do you think the press corps will go looking for Mr. Yormark comment, or will he continue to let Kliavkoff dig himself a bigger hole? I'm all screwed up. George Kliavkoff is what I've been saying, and then I hear people say it like nobody can get his name right. People say it all different ways. I was actually listening. I know you guys roll your eyes when I say this, but Paul Feinbaum's podcast, every once in a while I'll peek at who he's had on, because Lord knows it's not a show where he actually like gives a bunch of opinions. It's the laziest radio show in America, where he takes 500 callers a show and then leans on like 5 guests per show, which is a very lazy way to do radio, but I digress. And I saw that he had John Wilner on, so I was listening to him interview Wilner and, stumble over Kliavkoff's name. And anyway, so I'm a little screwed up there, but that's a good question. If you are Brett Yormark, do you try to find some public forum to come out and make a statement in response, or do you just let it sit? I can tell you what I would tell him. And what I would tell him is, like, unless there is a media opportunity that happens organically, I wouldn't be against him taking that, on the first week in office, if there is one that comes up organically. But I wouldn't like go out of my way to feel like I need to come and make a statement, because remember what I just said, like the fact that Kliavkoff had to do that or felt the need to do that tells me that he feels in a spot where there's a threat coming to him. And if you're the league that's more in a position of power, like just let your actions speak louder than your words. You don't need to come out. I don't know that there's a lot that Yormark could come out and say that would make you be like, oh man, the Big 12 has really doubled down here in a position of power. I feel like at that point, you're kind of just getting down into the weeds with Kliavkoff. I think it will stand out more if you just stand your ground, play it cool. If you're going to have public comments, make it fairly general, like what he said at Big 12 Media Days, and just let Kliavkoff be there saying whatever it is he's going to say and kind of looking like he's got some egg on his face without having much self-control with his comments. That would be my strategy. Don't think it's something you should avoid if there is a media opportunity, but I also would not feel like I have to come out and respond to that. That would be my take on it. I think it's a great question. I think that really is a great question, because I mean, you just got not only your league, but also like your presidents, like getting into a little more granular level here, like specific people called out by Kliavkoff, and there was tampering. So I could understand why you might want to say like, we're not tampering with anything. No, I would just stay out of it. Don't get drugged down into that kind of a fight with him. I don't think you need to. Calico Willie says, I was on the 3-Maw for a minute, then got the notification that John Kurtz was going live. All right, got to hit the live show. Hey, appreciate you, Calico. Just know that you'll get plenty on Dylan Edwards, Avery Johnson, all the K-State stuff, plus Keontae Johnson, former SEC preseason player of the year in basketball at Florida, visited K-State this weekend. So we've got some good stuff for you on that as well. Basketball is real exciting at the moment. Juan, appreciate the donation. Juan says, what do you think about the article this past week saying San Diego State being in play for either the Pac-12 or the Big 12? Possible it happens for the Big 12. Okay, well, you are bringing up, I believe that is Dennis Dodd who wrote that on CBS Sports. I did a radio hit in San Diego with my guy John Schaefer. I think that was Friday, where they were asking me about that too. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Like for the Pac-12, the obvious is they're and I heard John Wilner actually say this on Feinbaum, that he thinks the most likely scenario is that the Pac-12 adds 2 and stays put for now. So if I'm being told that from the guy who has his ear to the ground in the Pac-12 more so than anybody, I'm going to put some stock into it. So it sounds like that's a legitimate option. And if the Pac-12 is expanding, like 100%, that will include San Diego State. That is the slam dunk easiest decision for them. Program that's ready to go and compete. Honestly, like San Diego State might be able to. It's a little bit different. I understand when you jump to the conference and have to compete week in and week out, but I mean, shoot, they might compete for a conference championship pretty early on there. Plus, you're regaining some of the SoCal market, maybe just a teeny tiny little slice, but you're getting a piece of it, and it's a city, unlike LA, that is not oversaturated with a bunch of professional sports teams. They obviously lost the Chargers in the NFL, so it's a bit more starved for football. I think that's a no-brainer. And for the Big 12, the motivation is, well, hey, wait, that's a no-brainer expansion candidate for the Pac-12. We could hurt the Pac-12 if we took them. So it does come in play there. And there has been some legitimate talk of, well, let me remove the word legitimate there. There have been some that have speculated the Big 12 could try to take 3 of the 4 four-corner schools, maybe leave Utah behind because you already have BYU and you're already in the state and in that market, and then take San Diego State instead because perhaps that's more appealing to a TV network or networks, that you have that little sliver of SoCal with San Diego State. So yes, I actually do. I do believe that. I do think it could be in play for both. I just don't think the Big 12 would go add San Diego State, like just San Diego State for the sake of it. I think they'd have to be coming with somebody. I think another scenario that could play out is like if Arizona is the only school that you can pry loose right now, maybe they come with San Diego State. If you feel like you want to add somebody else with them to even that out, even out your numbers a little bit there, then maybe you go get San Diego State to come along with Arizona and then work on the rest and see if anybody else is going to come. I think that could be in play there. I think the more likely scenario right now is definitely the Pac-12, though, for San Diego State. Just if the Pac-12 is going to stand for right now at 10, and whether or not that means that they get a contract signed or not, that would be the interesting piece to me. Would San Diego State be added before a new TV deal comes? There's a lot of timing there that would be very interesting, but I think they're very much in play, yes. Christian, where did Christian go? Christian, kick it off the whiteboard fund. Let's try it. Thank you for the donation, Christian. Yes, I did mention the other day I should get Woody Page whiteboard going on behind and have some message every single time. I need to really think about that. I've grown pretty attached to this picture, though. It's been there basically the whole ride on this YouTube journey over the last year. So I'm, for nostalgic reasons, it'll be hard for me to part with that, but I may try it out. Juan, appreciate the donation again. Juan says, what do you think the report of the Big Ten dropping the AAU requirement for future expansion means? They going south, Big 12 poaching. I did see that was included. It was included, I think, in a CBS Sports report that the Big Ten didn't feel like they necessarily had to have an AAU school to come in. So perhaps that's good news. Like Iowa State just lost their AAU designation, right? I don't know. Maybe that brings something like that back in the fold. I don't know. I don't read a ton into that in terms of like a specific school or schools that I have in mind there. I took it more as just like kind of a generality comment by Warren, who was making this global point that like, we're not going to stand down for anything. We have to do what's best for us. This is a new world. We're not getting left behind like Sears. So if that means we need to go take somebody wherever it may be, whatever option that we have that's the best at the time, we're not going to be bogged down by things that we may have been in the past. Like that, I kind of took it more like that. Like that's an old, outdated way of thinking that we have to have these academically elite institutions above all else. I think he's more saying like, look, right now we got to do what we can just to save ourselves. Well, not really save themselves because they're in a great position already, but we have to do whatever we can to best position ourselves for the future. So that's more how I took it. Now, could it mean they're going south? I would have to really look into like what all the schools in the ACC that have been talked about. Like, is Florida State an AAU school? I think Virginia and North Carolina are. Miami, I believe, is. Clemson, maybe not. So I don't know. There may be a specific example like that, but I don't think he said that with a specific school in mind. My take on it, but that's just an opinion. M. Alvarez. Appreciate the donation, M. Alvarez. Any chance we can get an audio-only podcast from your lives for those of us that usually can't make it here? Great show. Love following you. Yeah, hey, first of all, appreciate the support. It's a very good question. I got approached by somebody wanting to just take the live audio from the shows and put it out as a podcast. The problem with that is like the YouTube thing right now is monetized. It's easy. I know how to do it. And if I start putting it out as audio content on a different platform, it's not going to be monetized like right away. Probably not to the extent. Basically, I mean, look, I feel like I'm college athletics talking to you here. Like it is in some ways a business, and I am trying to make money off of it. And so it's easier for me to make money off of it if it's all just in one place. If I start divvying it up, then that's going to split how people listen to it. And then there may not be as many people on YouTube. And then I'm not going to generate as much revenue there. And I don't have the model set up right now where it's really working and humming in a podcast platform or format like it is here on YouTube. So I don't know. I mean, I know this is a crappy thing to throw back at you, but I do know that you can, if you wanted to be able to put it on your phone and just play it like a podcast, like running in the background. I believe if you do pay monthly for YouTube, that is one of the features that you can utilize. So I know that's not super helpful there, but that's just an honest answer to your question there. And it is something that I've thought about, but yeah, from a financial standpoint, I don't think it would make sense for me, at least at this point. Robbie says, idea for next live, ranking Big 12 schools for the upcoming season. Oh, you mean talk about actual football? Like, is that a thing? We can talk about actual football? I didn't even realize that. We're so engrossed in realignment all the damn time. Yeah, we could probably, we're getting close, man. I guess that'll be the first show in August. At some point here, Robbie, I promise you it'll transition more into what I think about the upcoming season and talking some actual football. And I think we're close. Now we're through the media day news cycle for all these schools. I do think, I mean, the Pac-12 is about to hit the 30 days on their window. I don't think they're going to be accepting an offer in their exclusive negotiating window there, which means they're basically going to market for everybody. And I think that's going to take some time to play out. In fact, here was what Jason Scheer had to say about that. Jason Scheer, again, the Arizona 24/7 sports guy. He runs the 24/7 site. He said none of the Pac-12 presidents or athletic directors expect a deal this week, which is not a surprise. However, we've heard from sources the expectation is that a deal may not even come this year. Could change, but patience will be tested in a big way. So as it relates to what I was saying to you, Robbie, there, I think things will quiet down on that front unless somebody is going to get really jumpy and make the jump to the Big 12 right now. But I think we're about to be in a period where stuff realignment-wise calms a bit as we start heading into the season. So we'll probably gradually transition a little bit more into a football conversation. Now, as it relates to this comment in particular, I mean, first of all, that makes sense. I would not have thought that the Pac-12 would have gone into the 30-day exclusive negotiating window with the leverage or lack thereof that they have right now and gotten an offer that they can't refuse to go ahead and accept. So I understand the idea of just go to market, see what all you can get. There have been a lot of talks that they really want Apple or Amazon to get involved. I understand going to market, see what you can do, swing for the fences as far as that goes. But if it's going to take a year and you're still sitting there with like Oregon and Washington wondering and Cal and Stanford wondering, and we know that the Big Ten still has left the door open a little bit, even if they're not specifically aggressively pursuing that right now. Boy, if you're talking about trying to hang on to teams a year from now, and especially if the Pac-12 goes through another year where they kind of struggle on the field, that's going to get really hairy. And this is exactly the point that we've been making over and over again here on this channel and just hammering it home. There's no real sense of stability right now within this conference. So if it's going to be a year before you actually can get that deal in front of Oregon and Washington to even ponder whether or not they want to sign it, good luck keeping your house in order for a year. Like, that does not sound fun. The thing that the Big 12 had working for it on that front last year is we did not go through a year-long period of just total upheaval, not knowing what was happening. The Big 12 locked things down pretty quickly, and Bowlesby went out, got the 4 schools needed, the 4 best options, put them in place, and bam, there was some stability regained by everybody there. The Pac-12, it does not appear is in the same sort of position. Now, maybe that means they would go expand before they do actually add the next TV contract, but it seems to me like that would be a very stressful situation, and Kliavkoff is just going to be nervous every single day. I don't know how you would sleep at night in that scenario, really. But this lets me get to what I think was the biggest news. And I basically told you what happened here and kind of teased this out. But let me make sure I hammer this home. And I will get to, I see that there's some donations there. If you guys want to donate in the meantime to make sure your question or comment gets onto the show, it's the $ below the chat box where it says say something. You can click to donate with your question or comment and make sure that I see it, plus support the work I'm doing here on this channel to bring you Big 12 and college football content. But this is actually a tweet from Stuart Mandel. And it says, Oregon AD Rob Mullins was asked several times whether Oregon would sign a new grant of rights. Didn't say yes, but emphasized that short-term TV deals are better business for the conference. Okay, so Oregon's publicly non-committal now, being asked about signing a grant of rights. And Oregon's athletic director is out here being like, and just dodging several questions where he's being asked to specifically answer that. Wouldn't do it. That's not good. That's the kind of thing that creates instability. That's what everybody's worried about. And that's where it basically flies in the face of the comments that George Kliavkoff is making publicly, saying nobody's leaving. We're all on the same page. We're all good. That is a direct contrast to that. We all know that the key to this is Oregon and Washington being the two best brands that you have. We hear it from the Pac-12 propaganda machine. They're so much better than any brand in the Big 12. Okay, they are, but if they're not signed on, then they're basically free agents. And it doesn't really matter all that much to you if you guys don't actually have them signed. So good luck with that. And now combine that with the Jason Scheer report there that presidents and ADs feel like it could be upwards of a year before they get a TV contract, then okay, that sure seems like a lot of instability, doesn't it? And that is why these TV values and ratings and all that, it does not occur in a vacuum. And that's a real problem for the Pac-12. Like, I guess I don't know what Oregon could have or should have or would have said that would actually instill some stability, but I feel like there could have been an answer there like, yeah, hey, if we see a deal that is attractive enough financially, sure, we would sign a grant of rights. We would prefer it to be shorter. I think shorter is the way to go in college athletics now anyway, which is true, by the way. These are going to get shorter and shorter. Gone are the days of the ACC has been a nice learning experience for everybody to not sign like a 15-year grant of rights anymore. It's going to get shorter and shorter. And even just from a pure business standpoint of like the price for live sports continues to increase exponentially. So a shorter contract means you get to renegotiate more often, which means more money for everybody faster. A lot of reasons that would make sense. I think that could have been the answer right there for Morgan, and it would make you feel a little bit better than what it sounds like, at least was framed up there by Stuart Mandel. So I do not think that was good news in any way, shape, or form for the Pac-12. I don't think enough was made of that. And this is my frustration with the Pac-12 reporters. Again, not that they make all bad points, not that I think they're totally off, but I think that they very much minimize how difficult of a task that is facing George Kliavkoff right now to actually get Oregon and Washington and then Stanford and Cal too down. Stanford, all four of those schools, the ones that really control your league right now, to get all of them to agree to something. How do you find whatever that deal is going to be that makes everybody happy? I think that is a criminally underreported angle of this right now. And those that want the Pac-12 to succeed are going to just sort of gloss over that. And that's how this happens. I think a lot of times, like, people want to say reporter A is biased, reporter B is biased. You hate my team. You hate XYZ. You're a homer of blank, so you'll do whatever to prop them up. I think a lot of times the way that happens is much more subtle than what you would think. And I think this is one of those examples. Like, these guys are not, you could say Stuart Mandel with the TV numbers is being pretty deceptive there in trying to harm the Big 12. But for the most part, like a John Wilner is not really coming out with like a smear campaign against the Big 12 that's inaccurate or anything like that, or throwing out a ton of inaccurate information about the Pac-12. But it's, hey, like, we'll kind of minimize this angle of the story here and put it out there. I mean, it's been put out there. Wilner had it, but it was about like 12 paragraphs deep, for instance, in a story that he wrote the other day. And I was like, I feel like that should be up in the first 3 or 4 graphs there, because that's very important and a key linchpin in this whole deal. And so I think it's like, those are the subtleties of how that can kind of happen. And it's not always, I'm not even suggesting that it's always really like intentional. I think sometimes that can be unintentional or just below the surface that you don't even totally realize it's happening. But that, I think, is how sometimes things like that can happen. Raven or Ravon, probably Ravon there. I think I've messed up your name before, so my apologies. Ravon says, thanks for the great content. If the Pac-12 adds 2, any chance Boise is the other team? It's a very good question. I think Boise's in the mix. I've seen Fresno's name popping up quite a bit lately. So I would think Boise's probably in the top 3 or 4 in terms of candidates there. But I will just say, when I've seen people speculate about it recently, I've seen Fresno State as the other team mentioned in addition to San Diego State. I don't know that Fresno's like a massive TV market. That's like Northern California, right? I don't know. All I know is I have a friend that lived in Fresno for a little while and didn't have great things to say about the city, but I've never been there. No personal opinion about Fresno at all. Shout out to Pat Hill. But yeah, I think Boise would be in the mix. I would not consider it to be like a slam dunk though. And Boise is probably another one of those that, like, if people in the Pac-12 really look at the Big 12 as like a JUCO conference, I think that's a difficult hurdle to clear for Boise State, because if I'm not mistaken, Boise State, maybe like 30, 40 years ago was a junior college. I apologize if I have that wrong, but I believe I did hear that throughout the realignment process. And I don't think, look, that's not me saying that matters, but we know how these Pac-12 schools think and feel, and they really value the academic clout and all that. So I think that would be one of the bigger hurdles for Boise State there. But if push comes to shove, and if the TV, I mean, really the answer here will lie in, what do the TV networks think of Boise State? Do the TV networks think Boise is legit and that their football program brings enough value and juice? Then the Pac-12 is going to sure as heck think so. That's definitely what it will come down to. I assume you're a Boise fan, and I wish the best for you guys. Nothing but respect for Boise State. Been an incredibly fun addition to the college football world since they really burst onto the scene, right? So I wish nothing but the best for Boise State, and I hope like hell they get included in the big group. Whenever this big separation in college athletics happens, I hope Boise State is along for the ride. MH Neilio here. What up, Neilio? Neilio says, great show as usual. Keep up the great work, John. Thank you, Neilio. Much appreciate you, man. Always enjoy your thoughts and always appreciate the support here on the channel. Thank you so much for donating. Let's see. Lorenzo, thank you for the donation. I don't see a question or comment attached there, so just shout you out, Lorenzo Haynes, my man. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Okay. Lorenzo says, why try to merge with the Big 12, then try to ridicule the conference? Yeah, I mean, that's another piece of this. And that was reporting from Pete Thamel, okay, who has not weighed in a ton on the Big 12, Pac-12 stuff. But, I mean, that is ESPN, lead college football guy. Pete Thamel is as well-sourced as anybody in the country in college football. To me, he really does represent the top dog in terms of news gathering right now. And he is the one that reported that the Pac-12 approached the Big 12 first about 3 different options for some sort of a merger. And yes, that would fly in the face of a guy that is going to come publicly trash the conference and be like, we haven't decided if we're going to shop there. Again, that's where this is all just about positioning. It's all about trying to make yourself look tough publicly when really you know that you are not in the power position right now out of the 2 leagues. That's a fabulous point, and I'm glad that you made it. So thank you for that, Lorenzo. Fabulous point there. All right, scrolling through. I've got probably about 5 more minutes with you here. So if you have something for me, 5-minute warning. You can click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to donate. If you have something for me before I get out of here, Bud coming in with another big donation. Thank you, Bud. Bud says, good work, John. Big 12 is fine. Think population, not schools. LubbockGuesthouse.com. Yes, if you are going to Lubbock, as I went to Lubbock not all that long ago, and you need a place to stay, LubbockGuesthouse.com. He also threw in a Go Tech. There you go. I'll give you a little guns up, Bud, or a cat. I don't know. Have you guys, Tech fans, have you come up with a cactus symbol yet? Like a cactus hand symbol? I feel like at this point I'm behind by using guns up, and I got to find some way to use a cactus. Oh boy, my computer is about to die here. Let me make sure. You know what? Well, I probably don't have time to plug it in. All right, we're going to have to just bust through the rest of this here real quick before my computer dies, everybody. So if I do fall out suddenly, you know exactly why. Eric, I can't wait for Oklahoma State and Big 12 football to start. Oklahoma State, I feel like team flying under the radar a little bit right now because Baylor was obviously voted preseason champ. Oklahoma, there's going to be a lot of noise and focus on them no matter what, even if you think like I do that they'll be down just a bit. But Oklahoma State, who was that close, I just watched the clip again today. I saw someone posted on Twitter that last play where Oklahoma State gets 6 inches away from potentially the playoff in a Big 12 championship. And they bring back Spencer Sanders, who I forgot how great he was in the Fiesta Bowl. That was another thing I was reminded of the other day. Like Mike Gundy, rock solid, consistent. There's just more talk about, I mean, even K-State, as crazy as it is, like a lot of people are talking K-State up of being this dark horse in the conference. So there's like Oklahoma talk, Baylor talk, K-State talk, Oklahoma State. Oh, and Lord knows, Texas too. But in that top 5, I feel like Oklahoma State's getting the least amount of attention right now. And that may be a bad thing for everybody else because I feel like the Cowboys do kind of thrive in that sort of a role. So you should be very excited. You should be very excited. Mike Gundy is going to deliver you. I mean, you know that the floor is going to be pretty high for Oklahoma State football because it always is. So, yes, shout out to Gundy and co. Robert, thank you for the donation. Robert says, late to the chat, stop with San Diego State and Boise State to the Pac-12. They are too arrogant to take them. They are not AAU. Look, man, survival means a lot. Boise State, I think is a discussion. Look, the Pac-12 would take San Diego State. If they're expanding, San Diego State is going to be there. That is a realistic possibility. So I would disagree with you on that, Robert. The Pac-12 will absolutely take San Diego State. They know the value of Southern California. They've been told the value of Southern California. San Diego State gives you a chunk of that with the most ready athletic department in terms of competitiveness as well of any of the candidates available. Like John Wilner, who, again, knows the Pac-12 better than anybody. I mean, he's certainly on that bandwagon. San Diego State, absolutely, I think, stands a very good chance to get in the Pac-12. Boise State, that's a bigger hurdle. Academic-wise there. So now, if you want to say you don't think the Pac-12 will end up expanding, again, I think that's a discussion worth having. But it is a legitimate possibility right now because they're going to be in a position where they're trying to do whatever they can. And if the SoCal TV market means that much that UCLA got an invite to the Big Ten, like I think that to me is a part of this. UCLA being the second, the baby bro in the LA part of this, getting an invite tells you all you need to know about Southern California and the value there. That they got that instead of an Oregon or Washington. Rob, Boise was a JUCO until 1965. All right, there we go. So I had it pretty much correct. I probably didn't give them quite enough credit there in terms of how long it's been. Boise was a JUCO until 1965. Fresno is in the Central Valley and is SoCal. Go Cats. How about that pathetic KU recruiting? Oh, wow. Rob with a side swipe of Kansas. Look, that wasn't even me, okay? I just read it. The guy paid for the donation there. I read the comment. I just read it. I didn't say it. Rob said it. That doesn't mean I disagree with it, Rob. But right now, recruiting-wise, I'm a little down based on Dylan Edwards and Josh Manning and some recent developments for K-State, unfortunately. But I'm always here to chuckle a little bit at the side swipe. So I appreciate the hustle there. Vanity Rose, great name. Vanity Rose, both San Diego State and Fresno State to the Pac-12, please. Okay, so see, there you go. I said I've heard a lot more about Fresno State lately. And that would back that up with a Pac-12 fan coming in and hoping for Fresno State to be included as a part of that package. If I were the Pac-12, I would find it pretty easy to get behind San Diego State. I'd be very excited if the Big 12 lands, 3 of the 4 corner schools at San Diego State. Man, sign me up. I will be on the first plane to watch K-State and San Diego State play whenever that game happens. I can tell you that much. And Robert says, Robert, thank you for the donation again. Robert says, I live in San Diego. Very few watch SDSU here. Too many transplants, too much to do like surfing, etc. Totally agree. But I guess I would also say, like, how many people in LA were watching UCLA football? And UCLA still got that invite. Like, it's at least a little portion of it. And it seems like that does really matter a lot. And the Pac-12 just doesn't, frankly, they just don't have a ton of great options. If they're not going to be able to poach the Big 12, which we've discussed that ad nauseum, including here tonight on this chat, you got to start going down the list, and San Diego State definitely fits the profile better than anybody else that is on that list. All right, my computer's about to die here. We're at about an hour. I appreciate all of you guys. It's been a great chat, fun chat tonight. I think I got to pretty much everything. The big important stories, certainly. See how this thing starts to evolve, man, if it's going to keep being realignment or if we start gearing up more toward football season because it is just around the corner. Boom to the Sooner. I see you sneaking in here. Thank you for the donation. Boom to the Sooner. Will you root for your nemesis, Kansas, or the Shorthorns when they play in Lawrence this year? It's always a tough one for me. I remember being very conflicted in the Kansas-Texas game for a little while last year in Austin. But I think that one, I eventually was like, no, look, I'd rather laugh at Texas here. Like, give Kansas the win. But there were moments of being a little bit, little bit like, what do I do here? Am I really rooting for Kansas? Because, I don't really want them to get that program up and running. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to depend. It'll depend on some factors, like how is the rest of the season going? I can't give you an answer right now, Boom to the Sooner. It will be dependent on factors. Ask me, I'm going to give you a Bill Snyder answer. Whenever you'd ask him on National Signing Day what he thought about a recruiting class, he'd say, ask me in 4 years. So ask me in like 3 months the answer to that question. I can give you a better one. But it is a good question. Thank you for that, Boom to the Sooner. All right. It's going to do it for me, guys. Spread the word to your friends. If you got Facebook groups with fans of the school that you like or fans of the conference you like, whatever it is, spread the word. Twitter, wherever it is that you're communicating with other people that love college football, that love the Big 12, please spread the word about the channel. Let's keep growing this community. It's growing like crazy right now. Just an awesome response to everything since realignment fired back up. Follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. You can find me on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4, if you want to support the channel as well, if you are watching this after the fact. And I will see you guys on Wednesday, maybe a little content before then. We'll see. Who knows? Take care.